Welcome back to the Wanjiko Show. Thanks for watching. The election of William Samoei Ruto as Kenya's fifth president has elicited much discussion across the country about the separation of church and state. Today, we take a look at the origins of the concept, the proponents and the opposers, and its implications in modern-day Kenya. The idea of the separation of church and state dates back to the 1800s, and all the way in America, some Protestant believers were afraid that other Protestant believers would befriend politicians and make it easy for their way of worshiping to be enforced on other Protestant believers. So if you are familiar with the history of America, some of the early settlers in the continent were actually people who fled their countries of origin because of persecution for their beliefs. And when they came to America, they were people with different beliefs. Some are Anglicans, others are Baptists, others are Presbyterians, others are Calvinists. And they were afraid that the government would pick one of the religions and force all the other denominations to subscribe to that denomination. So the Protestants wrote to their politicians and asked that the state would not enforce one religion on everyone else. One of the issues that's raised when the concept of separation of church and state is raised is the fact that it is very easy to make religion and politics not to mix. So sometimes people feel like by enforcing separation of church and state, we're actually saying that politics and religion should not mix. However, that was not the initial idea. Those who initially proposed the idea of separation of church and state were not essentially opposed to the mixing of politics and religion. All that they were opposed to was the establishment of a state religion. Say, for instance, as the Baptists, if I were elected to be the president of Kenya, it wouldn't be fair for me to make everyone else subscribe to Baptist beliefs. That is normally the confusion. Modern day jurisprudence tends to bend towards the strict division between church and state. The Kenyan law as well makes it illegal for the government to establish a state religion. However, distinction should be made between forcing citizens to worship in a certain way and opposition to the mixing of politics and church. The concept of the separation of church and state does not make it illegal to mix politics and religion. What it does is it makes it illegal for politicians to establish a state religion. The main opposition to the idea of the separation of church and state is that it is not realistic. A nation, just like a human being, has a physical aspect, or rather the body politic, and a metaphysical aspect. There must be something, there must be an ideology that animates a nation. If it's not Christianity, it will be Islam or Buddhism or atheism, as is the case in some socialist countries like China. So it is not realistic to say that a state will be totally devoid of religion. Thirdly, citizens benefit from living with a fear of a higher authority, an authority higher than the government. That fear means that they will do what's right even when they know that the government may not be able to catch them doing wrong. So the idea of God helps citizens do what's right even when the government is not seeing, because they know that there's a final day of judgment. And this helps citizens live peaceably with each other. Furthermore, public practice of religion gives people meaning in life. Everyone reaches a point where they need encouragement, they need meaning in life. And without religion, it's very hard for people to find meaning in their life. So if citizens are going about their daily lives without meaning in their lives, it means that they won't see the need to be kind to each other or to be responsible in their lives. Public practice of religion helps people, or rather gives people the idea that their lives have meaning. So what are the reasons that make some people support the idea of separation of church and state? First, people do not want to be forced to worship in a certain way. Say for instance, the Baptists do not want to be forced to worship like the Catholics. Secondly, when a certain way of believing is supported by the government and enforced by the government, people are turned away from it. So more people will be dissuaded from joining a religion because they see it as a government project. Thirdly, state religion becomes an easy way for politicians to excuse themselves from necessary criticism by the church. Also, the church, according to the Bible, is the salt of the society. We keep the society fresh by pinpointing what's going wrong. However, when our politicians are very close to the church leaders, it becomes very hard for the church leaders to do the work of pinpointing where the politicians are going wrong. That means that the church won't play its critical biblical role. Ultimately, Kenya has a lot to gain by having a leader at the helm of its government who is not afraid to publicly profess and practice his Christian faith. However, those who are opposed to Ruto's public show of Christianity should not be seen as opposing Christianity, the religion per se. What in fact they are doing is living up to what Christ warned in Matthew, that if the church lost its saltiness, it would be thrown away and trampled underfoot. What we should ask as the church in Kenya is where we have failed in the past and how we have brought it on ourselves to be trampled underfoot and thrown away. So we need to change our ways and live up to the expectation that Christ set for us, that we would be the salt of our society. I trust that you've learned something from this episode. Let me know from the comments down below whether you support Ruto's public profession and practice of his Christian faith, and what you think that the church should do so that in the future we do not look hypocritical, but rather we live up to our responsibility as the salt of the earth. See you in the next one.